Hey, welcome back to the videos. We're still continuing the theory application for banjo. In the previous video we explored the G scale, trying to find as many different ways to play the G scale between frets 1 and 5 that we could, moving from one string to the other. And then we tried to examine how the G major scale, for example, helped us locate notes of melodies, because we know the notes of melodies now are typically scale notes. So if you say you play Cripple Creek as the example before, if you say I play Cripple Creek in the key of G, what you're saying is really I use G scale notes primarily as my primary building blocks for the melody, because most melodies are just made up of scale notes that relate to the key you're playing in. So saying you play Cripple Creek in the key of G means that you're using G scale notes primarily for melody. And what we did in the previous video also was isolate just the bare bones melody, took a lot of the rolls and things out, and just tried to find the notes of the melody for the first part of Cripple Creek. And we also discovered when we did that we were using some notes out of the G scale more than some. We didn't use all 7. We tended to use a certain group of notes. And we found out that was pentatonic based, which means pent meaning 5. Pentatonic scale is basically a 5-note version of a scale you already know. So let's examine in this video pentatonics, because pentatonics are really important for melodies and our kind of music, and they're the basis for most of the songs that you know in traditional music, and especially vocal songs tend to be pentatonic based, which basically means for the key of G we need to isolate 5 notes out of the 7 for G major and look at just those notes as kind of like a little special group and compare that to melodies, which is what I want to do in this video. So first we need to understand how you arrive at a pentatonic version of a scale. It's easy. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. I'll put it on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Those notes out of a major scale like G gives you G major pentatonic, or a G pentatonic scale, which means that you can play 7 notes but just go 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2. That could be a complete, if you wanted to play 7 notes, you could play a pentatonic version of a G major scale by playing the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and then repeat 1 and 2, and you'd have 7 notes again, you know, which would sound more like a real scale. But you'd only be playing the same 5 notes all the time. So let's look at a G pentatonic scale, and I'm just going to start anywhere. I'm going to start, I don't know, with the open 3rd. There's my G, that's the first note of the scale. The second note of a G scale is A, and I'm going to choose this A. B is the 3rd, so I'm going to go open 2nd. Okay, now 1, 2, 3, 5. We're supposed to skip over the 4th note of the G scale, G, A, B, C. So we need to skip over the C. G, A, B, D would be our 5th note, right? G, A, B, C, D. So we're going to skip C, kick that note out, and then go right to D. G, A, B, D. And then the last note of the pentatonic version is the 6th note, which would be D, E. So when you hear a pentatonic version of a scale like G pentatonic, G, A, B, D, E, it tends to have an oriental sound. One of my students mentioned this one time. That sounds like Japanese music or Chinese music. I'm like, well, actually it does, because a lot of music from the Orient is pentatonic based, which means they play 5 notes primarily as a lot of the building blocks. Not all the songs are purely pentatonic, but a big part of like Chinese music, traditional music, is based on pentatonic versions of scales, just 5 notes used to make up melodies. Well, we don't want our music to sound like Chinese music necessarily, but our melodies and our vocals also correspond to pentatonic scales. So now again, if I want to make this 7 notes as a pattern, because we know that a G scale played in its normal form has 7 notes, and then the 8th note is the same note again, right? Well, if we want to play a pentatonic version of a scale and make it sound like a complete pattern, we can just repeat the first and second notes. So I'd have G, A, B, D, E, and then I'd have to play a G and an A again. And that would give me a 7-note pattern that sounds more like a full scale. Okay, now you say, well, that's great, John. Now I've discovered a pentatonic scale and I can play the first, second, fifth, and sixth notes out of basically any scale, a major scale like G, for example, and I can play the 2 notes from the beginning again, and I've got a complete sounding pattern. Now, how does that help me find Cripple Creek? Well, let's look at the notes of Cripple Creek in this video and then compare it to the notes of the pentatonic scale to see how they line up. So we have G, G, D, B, then we have C, E, D, then we have D, B, A, G, D, E, G. Well, I'm going to tell you automatically from listening to myself play that every note that we played was basically those 5 notes, those pentatonic scale versions, except for the C note. Again, let's go back to the top. G, G, those 2 notes are also the first notes of the pentatonic G scale. D is one of the notes, and B is one of the notes. The C is the only odd duck in the bunch. The E here is pentatonic, then D. B, B, A, that's pentatonic. G, then D, pentatonic. E, pentatonic. G. But you might say, well, wait a minute, John, those notes, yeah, I know you could group those together as pentatonic G, but they're regular G scale notes too, right? I'm like, right. Well, how do I know if I'm playing a pentatonic based melody or not? Well, it's easy to tell because you'll be using those notes, the first, second, third, fifth, and sixth notes exclusively pretty much. You know, we had an oddball C in there. But you won't be using F sharp as much because that's the 7th note of the scale. So basically you've only got 2 notes that you don't play that much, C and F sharp in the key of G. You got G, A, B, D, and E. Those 5 notes you'll be surprised to learn that once you study melodies. In the key of G you would tend to use those 5 notes more than you would the C and the F sharp just to play melodies, simple melodies. So we can examine some other melodies. I don't know if we have time left in this video. Let me take Down the Road. The song Down the Road is usually played in the key of B, but I'm going to move it to G. And I'm going to do the same thing for it that I did for Cripple Creek and identify the notes. So we have G, G, D, G, E, G, G, E, D, E, G, B, B, G, B, G, E, B, B, G, D, E, G. Okay, not many notes in that melody, but if you really compare them to the notes of the G scale, you'll see that you're still using those pentatonic or those 5 notes out of the G scale more than the rest. And you can do this for thousands of songs in our kind of music that are played in the key of G because we're using this for the example. But it doesn't really matter what key you were playing these songs in. You would find that every time you're playing in a major key like the key of A pentatonic or the first, second, third, fifth, and sixth notes out of an A scale are the ones you use more than those other 2 to build melodies. So study the whole scale, yes, but then if you want to hone in on how melodies work inside of a full-fledged scale in our kind of traditional music, try focusing even a little more intensely on the pentatonic version of that scale. So practice the entire scale and then practice the pentatonic version and compare that to melodies, and you'll start hearing where these notes appear on the fingerboard. I appreciate it. We'll see you next video.